What's up, guys? John from Bennett's Customs. We're back on the race car still, which is kind of fun. This is where we get to do the nitty gritty, dialing it all in. As you just saw in our last episode, I had made a new hood and hood sides for it. I've always wanted to do it. I just didn't have time when we went up to the race. So kind of sneaking a few days in, trying to get a few bits done for an upcoming show. So basically, this is going to be kind of a part 2 of 3. So the next video will be setting up the louver machine and punching about a bunch of louvers. But in this case, we were a bit unsure whether or not we were going to paint or polish the aluminum, and I wasn't quite sold on painting the whole thing. I think it was going to make it a bit too long, but it's better we try to polish it first, and if it doesn't look good, then we can paint it rather than going the other way around. So yeah, I was definitely a bit inspired by, you know, like kind of that traditional look that a lot of guys do with their brushed aluminum hoods and lots of louvers and that, but I really wanted it polished, especially like Louis Stan's T-model Roadster that he had. It's now sold, but as you guys may know, I'm Hothead Lou on Instagram, and as well as like Alex Tremaine's amazing Roadster that everyone kind of knows about from back in the day, where he had like basically a full chromed hood and sides. So it just looked amazing, and I kind of want to try and replicate that. So I'm definitely by no means a professional poler at all. Probably the lowest of any polishing. So I definitely have kind of learned a few things. I've spoke to a very nice gentleman named Ren at Guru Polishing. He's in Perth, and he actually like sat on the phone for almost an hour and just kind of like gave me a few tips and tricks to try and use. So I definitely tried a few, and some of them actually worked. So obviously the quality of aluminum is going to be a huge thing as far as polishing. Hindsight, probably should have just tried to source a sheet of aluminum that's already mirror finished, but it's really hard to find and quite expensive. So, you know, this is kind of a bit of a learning experience. This is kind of the aluminum that we are working with. It is 1.6. It came in a sheet 2.4 by 1200, and it's got the PVC coating on it. So it does come with that brushed look. It's not quite as bad as marine grade, but it still is kind of tricky to polish. So over this video, I'm just going to show you kind of the steps that I've tried to get. I've actually done a side as a test panel. So if you look down that, it's a bit dusty, but you can definitely see that I was able to get quite a good, you know, mirror finish out of it. It's still quite foggy though, so I will try a few other tricks to try and get it to, you know, really pop. I know nothing will be as nice as the nickel plated pipes on it, but this is just to complement it. So yeah, basically we're gonna get started. We do have one hood side to do and the top of the hood. Yeah, basically I'm hoping a few of the lines that I use for the English wheel will come out. You can see on the inside, I don't care about the inside, but you can see where all the trails are from running the English wheel on it to try and curve it. So we are going to start off with, yeah, like 1,000 wet and dry, and that should get the majority of these kind of this grain that comes with it when you get the sheet. And then we will move on to different grits that I'll kind of explain through the process. So, but definitely not a professional at polishing. I'm just very emphasizing that because there's probably going to be a ton of people saying you're doing it wrong. So please, in the comments, like, let us know what would work better. We'd love to try and get it to like a brilliant mirror finish. We know that the quality aluminum definitely plays a lot of that role, but if you guys have any tips and tricks as well, they'd be great to share with us, and for everyone else that follows along can kind of read along, and for anyone that wants to do some aluminum polishing, could be a huge benefit to them. So let's get straight into it. so first step, usually when you are using wet and dry, I would suggest that you soak these. Even soak them overnight if you want to use them the next day. It's just nice to kind of hold the moisture in this while using it. I just have a nice little pad. It's got two different kind of like densities, I guess you'd call it. One's a bit softer than the other, so I am just kind of using the hard side. And yeah, basically I'm going to use Windex. I've seen this being used a lot. It adds a great lubricant as well as like cleaning. So because aluminum is so porous, I think like, yeah, maybe using water, I don't know, it kind of clogs pores maybe, I don't know. You might be thinking this is ridiculous, but it works, so I'm gonna do it. So let's get straight into just running a few passes to try and just get a bit of the grain out of the hood. So we have it clean. I've just gone over it with metho spirits to make sure it is nice and clean. I would also suggest wearing gloves, but I don't have any at the moment, to keep your oily fingerprints off aluminum. And yeah, like white spirits would work really well too. But yeah, I've just used metho and it seems to do the trick. So we're gonna get a few dusted on, and I'll kind of just start on one half. You can definitely tell the difference between a piece of wet and dry that's been soaked and not soaked. So I would suggest, yeah, keeping yours soaked or dipping them in water or something. It works really well. And I just take a sheet, fold it in 4 and cut it, so you get 4 kind of pieces out of it, which is nice. And then I'm just kind of sticking in one direction at the moment, just to try and get that grain out of there. And a lot of guys would probably start with a heap of different steps. Even when I was kind of looking on YouTube, there was tons of guys going like down to like 220 and up from there, which I think 220 is probably a bit extreme for what I would need, but maybe if you had a lot of deep scratches or nicks in the aluminum. But yeah, I'm starting with 1200. Maybe it would come up better if I started with like 800 and then worked up. So, you know, this is all just trial and error. We're purely just learning as we go on this one. So we are by no means master polishers. Maybe at the end we will be. All right, so after using wet and dry, 1200, actually I started with 1000, then I did 1200. I'd probably go 1000, 1500, but I didn't have any 1500, so did 12. But I used these 3M pads, 1500 ones, and I've kind of basically been able to achieve the finish that you see now. So if I just put that down carefully, you can see that is 1200 or 1500 wet and dry just by hand. And then this is now 1500 on the Orbital sander. And you can just slightly see my English wheel marks. I'm not too fazed about those. I probably could actually start with a lower grit and work my way up to actually try and cut those back, but I'm just gonna see what it looks like. Anyway, so now after I've sanded this, I will move to an interface pad, which is one of these guys. I will put the 1500 onto the interface pad using that. And then after that, I will step to the 3M Trizac 3000 pads. And that, yeah, has a little bit of padding to it. So let's just try a few different steps, see what works and what doesn't. All right, so I've hit basically everything down, Orbital sander, 3000, and now I'm just working on foam pad with a bit of aluminum auto sol. This stuff works really well. I use the steel stuff all the time when I'm polishing stainless, and that works great. So I've just gone over it now. Then I'm gonna put a different pad on, get a bit of this off, and then we'll see kind of where we're at. All right, we're back working on it again. I've tried several different techniques to try and get this right. Basically, right off the pad, 3000 and a buff, it definitely brought it up really, really well, but still had that fogginess. I ended up using a straight grinder with a loose leaf pad on it, and some white wax, which is good for, you know, the final like finish for aluminum. So I ended up trying that. I'll just kind of give you a little bit of a shot. So this is the before kind of in this area, and then it kind of goes in, and you can definitely see the difference where it's foggy kind of through here, and then it transitions to about here. So it's definitely a little bit better than the other side that I've done. So what I'm going to do is actually just do this whole panel, and the one thing I'm just struggling with is trying to keep the lines out of it. You know, like there's only such a small contact area versus using like a buffer or the Orbital with a pad on it. There's a lot more surface area. So I think it's just like technique, but I'm learning as we're doing this, so it's kind of cool to be able to try it. So what I'm going to do is I'll hit it with this straight grinder with the kind of loose leaf calico pad, I believe they're called. This is actually the box here. It's a Josco brand. And yeah, it's for mirror finish, and it says for white compound is used for finishing alloy. So it's kind of your last coat. So we're gonna give that a shot and see what it looks like. And then yeah, we'll see if that's sufficient enough. And if not, we'll try another step. So let's get into it. One thing too is when I am using the polishing wheel, it's going clockwise, and like I've mentioned before, you want the polishing wheel to come off the edge rather than the other way where it would grab and want to pull the aluminum, which could cause all sorts of stuff. So just on my edge, you saw over there where I came close and it kind of pulled. So I'll make sure I do this edge the opposite way, and I'll continue doing this one. It does seem to get a little bit warm, but it hasn't distorted or done anything. So we'll just continue going with it and see what happens. In my experience with doing like polishing with stainless and stuff, which is definitely in the case of polishing seems to be way easier, you don't want a ton of wax on it. You just want enough to be able to keep it kind of relatively like lubricated, enough product that you're trying to actually put into the metal to polish it. But yeah, the more you put on this, the more kind of excess that's going to be on there that's kind of hard to get off. So that's just kind of, you know, what I've experienced. So all right, another random tip. Maybe not so random, maybe it's common. Corn flour, or yeah, like any type of cooking flour. Kind of works when you're using like a loose leaf sheep's wool buff.
see. Oh, I got a little girl who's been waiting. Promised that she'd marry me. Mister, can we leave this seat? I'll shovel coal, Lord, to pay my fare. Gotta get this train down to the station. My little girl waiting for me there. Well, the night is dark and Lord, it's cloudy. I've been traveling that lonesome road. My one true love waiting at the sea. Won't that low train carry me back? About 9, and poor boy's heart started overheating, sending all of his love on down. For the night is dark and Lord is quiet. I've been traveling this.
All right, so after a little bit more research and speaking to Crafty B, thank you, Mr. B, massive tip. Basically, using the Orbital and polishing it, you're never actually going to get it perfectly to shine, or at least I couldn't. So I've been using the straight grinder with that calic wheel on it and the white finishing polish. And I was doing it before, but I was moving a little bit too fast and I was getting these streaks and it was really hard to eliminate them. After a few tips, basically you just kind of work one area and just go really slow. And as you can see, this is kind of what I'm working with. So you can clearly see me here. And then, you know, this is kind of what I was getting before. So it was still really nice and still has a great reflection in it, but that is a huge difference. And even when you put it down like low, you can really see, so everything's reflecting in it. And then what I'll do after is I'll just go over this with a really soft rag or a microfiber and just use like a bit of mother's polish or just kind of a finishing one, and it might just help to take a little bit of the swirls out. But yeah, it's definitely looking really good. And as you can see, a little teaser for a few upcoming videos. The shop is absolutely chockers full. We'll stand up on here and give you a look. A few bodies in there, some wheels. The Roadster is somewhere up the front, which is exciting. upon further investigation, and speaking to a few people who have done this a lot, one of them being Crafty B, who a lot of you would probably know who he is. If not, definitely look him up. He is an incredible sand caster and a wizard at making all sorts of stuff and casts out of bronze and aluminum and all sorts. But he's also very knowledgeable when it comes to polishing. So he gave me a few tips that I'm trying. And basically what I was struggling with is I was using like an orbital sander, and then up to, you know, using my buffing machine that I would use to like cut and polish a car. But unfortunately it'll give it a really nice shine, but it doesn't give it that mirror finish. So what he explained was basically you need to use like a straight grinder with a calic wheel on it, which I've started to use. And obviously noticed a massive difference. So the white wheel that I have, which is this guy, this one I was using, but realized that if I use just a stitched rag with the brown compound, then using this one, it seems to get a very nice finish. I still have yet to figure out how to get every single perfect streak out of it, but that's for another day. But I'll just show you here. So that is the hood. There's a side. So you can tell that they definitely are a mirror finish, but they are, you know, in some of the lights, you can't quite see it, but in some of the lights you can see it's definitely not perfect. And I obviously want to try and get it as perfect to mirror as possible without any imperfections, but that's probably going to be really tough. So yeah, basically I've kind of used the stitch rag with the brown compound, and then I use the white calic rag or stitching wheel like this one, and I use a white compound on it as well, so that's more for like a finish, and it definitely seems to work. So I think the final step would be to use like a proper just top coat buff and just get those, you know, those little scratches or swirls out. But yeah, kind of like obviously a bit tricky. Wasn't sure how this was all gonna kind of work out, so it's been a bit of fun. Also a few curse words, but you know, I'm happy I definitely tried. I think it looks really good on there. I'll roll it outside in a minute when I'm finished this panel off. So let's get this one done. So I got the stitch rag, brown compound, and you can kind of see it definitely makes quick work of it, whereas it's obviously a little bit harder, so it polishes it a lot nicer. And then I don't know if you can see the streaks, but it still leaves some streaks, so that's when we'll go to the white one with white compound on it. And also I just use like a little blade and spin it and just try and cut this once in a while, just to try and get a little bit of the residue that is kind of sticks on there off before proceeding and putting on another layer. And especially with the wax, like I'm definitely not loading it up. I'm only just putting on just a small amount on there just to put a bit of coverage on it, and then I can kind of move the wax around where I'm trying to go, so I don't have a whole ton of product on there. I kind of start like where I know I have wax and I know that the wheel is spinning this way, so I actually kind of like work it so I still get to use a bit of that wax that kind of wants to like come off the wheel and go onto the metal itself. And then with corners and stuff, you obviously want to make sure that your rag is coming off your corner. I've explained that before, but if you go to try and spin that around and you this is spinning in a clockwise motion and it catches that, it's going to catch this, and especially with aluminum being so soft, it potentially could bend or, you know, flick this thing off. So with the hood, I had it clamped down with some soft clamps, but it seems to work. So we're going to work on this area, and then we'll go over it with the other guy. See, it starts to get that glaze on it, and that glaze is what I use the screwdriver or kind of anything when it spins, and I just run it across, and that'll cut it off. So you can see there, it takes a bit of that glaze off, and then I can apply a fresh bit of compound. All right, so you can see, you can move a little bit slower. I may have been going a little bit too fast, but if I hold it up, you can kind of see where those lines are. That's obviously a bit of wax that's still on there. So what I'm gonna do now is, because I wanna hit this with the white wheel and the white compound, I'm actually gonna spray this with metho and just clean all that residue, that excess wax that's on there off, so that we can use the fresh compound, which is the white stuff there. So I'm gonna grab my methyl hydrate, give this a good wipe. I want to be pretty liberal with this too, so it gets all coverage. I usually let it sit for a second just to get everything there. All right, so now that we have everything polished, we need to mount it. And what I'm actually gonna do is, I've drilled some holes in the bottom of this, and then I've actually drilled and tapped for a 1/4 inch by 20 bolt. And what that's gonna do is, it actually comes up. I got a spring washer on the back side of it, so it'll lock it into place. And these are going to be locating pins that'll hold the bottom of this panel. In tricky spots where I can't get it, I've actually welded a tiny little bit of welding wire right to the end of this, just a real small tack. And I'm going to have to do it for this one here because there's not a whole lot of room to get up through there. So I'm going to weld a bit of welding wire right on the top of this, then I'll be able to feed it up through the hole, and then I can thread it, and then I should be able to get a wrench in behind there. Otherwise, I can do a double nut to tighten it up, which I'll do on this one here. So I'm just gonna walk over and I'll show you what I mean by welding it on. So we have our welding wire and our bolt, and what we're gonna do is try to achieve to just do a tiny little tack right on the end of that. All right, so you look closely, I was able to actually tack that right on. So now we'll let that cool down for a second. I should be able to thread this up and through the hole thread this in. So we found that, and now we're going to try and just spin the top of this and get that thread started. The first one worked really well because I got the wire right in the center of the bolt, and this one's just off to the side a little bit, so it makes it kind of tricky to get it started. So I'm just put a little bend in the top of the welding wire right here, and I'm just spinning my finger on that. And if you watch closely, sorry for the shaky, that comes right up all the way to the top, and then we'll just break this off, and then I'll just hit that with the top with a little file, and there you have it. And then I can still get a bolt spanner in there. I just can't get my fingers in. So now I can bolt that in, and she's good to go. So now we have 4 locating pins that will hold the side of this hood side down. For the ones that I couldn't get the wrench or socket in behind, I just did 2 1/4-inch bolts, or nuts, sorry, straight on top, jam nutted them, tightened it up, pulled them off. So now, if my measurements are correct, this hood side should drop down into place over top. Perfect. Nice even line all the way across. And inside, I'll just put 2 wing nuts on these 2, and that will hold it into place. Very easy to get to from underneath. And now it'll be seamless on the outside. There'll be no bolts, nothing holding it on, no latches, no leather straps, just held straight down by those. So all I did here was just bolt the 2 flanges together. I measured, I knew exactly where it's going to sit. It's nice and flush on this side, so this now is one piece. So you'll pull the whole lot off. It'll catch the locating pins, and then I'll do 2 little wing nuts on these 2 that are very easy to get to from underneath. So 4 wing nuts will hold it all down, keep it tight. So now we're gonna clamp the other hood side onto this side, drill the holes and bolt it in. One piece.
Well, in my absence, I'll be surely missing you. I've been working every day, and I sure hope your love is too. And if I give you cause to doubt me, hope you always think about me. And if you think I will find enough.
All right, so we've just rolled it outside. I've kind of relatively finished what I was trying to do as far as the polishing. So there's still a few more steps that I want to try and do to get it to like look perfect, but it's very close. But I really like the way everything's kind of mounted in. It's really nice and tight. There's 2 wing nuts on each side that are holding the whole hood and hood sides down. So like I mentioned before, there's no latches, there's no straps, there's no clips. Everything is just super simple. Really nice lines. The gap all the way around is all even. Yeah, I'm super excited with how it turned out. I think that was, you know, definitely a huge job trying to polish. Hindsight would have been so much easier to just prime and paint it, but I feel like it's you know, it looks what I was trying to achieve. So next on is putting some louvers in this thing, so that'll be cool. But we're about to pack this up. We're heading back up to Lake Perkalili tomorrow morning for 2 days of a bit of test and tune, I'll call it. And yeah, very excited to get up there and get a, you know, stretch it out a couple more times than just driving around the block like we've been doing. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. We'll see you on another episode of Bennett's Customs. Make sure you guys like and subscribe, hit that notification. Gotta take advantage of it.